In this lesson, we're going to get started on the face of our character. Alright, so going to our front view, hitting F on the keyboard. If we take a look at our character's face, let's go ahead and hide the body at the moment so we can see that. So we'll just hide selection. Looking at the character's face, there are several deforming loops that are going to be extremely important for facial animation. So the loops that we need to make sure that we are taking care of are going to be around the eyes, around the nose into the mouth, and then around the lips. These are going to be the three crucial loops that are going to allow for facial animation in a wide range of emotions and articulation. So to get started with this, I like to build out the three major loops first and then start working in the rest of the geometry. So I always like to start out with the eye. So I want to make sure that we're working on the character's left or right eye. In our case, it's going to be on the left. And we'll use a brand new plane. We'll left click and drag out a small polygon, and we want to make sure that length and width segments are set to 1. Now we'll right click on that and we'll convert it to editable poly. Let's hit L on our keyboard to go to our left view, and let's make sure that this is in place on our geometry. Now you'll notice that the reference image might be a little off, so you want to make sure that you pick one and go from there. Now we should be fairly close, so we're going to come in and we're going to go to edge mode and we're going to start to extrude these out. So let's go ahead and pull this edge out just a little bit, kind of elongate that, and then we're going to hold down shift and drag out these edges. Okay. Now once you start getting to the corner of the eyes, we need to make sure that we're turning that geometry to go all the way around in a loop. So let's switch to vertex mode and let's start to take these outside points and point those toward the center of the eye. Mostly I like to point them toward the pupil. Okay. Now let's go back to edge mode, hitting 2. Let's hold down shift and drag these points out. And here, you'll see that we have to definitely grab these vertices and pull those over. Now once we have those set, let's come in and let's start to pull these out a little bit further. Now again, we want to try to keep the polygons around the same size. If they get a little bit larger or a little smaller, that's okay, as we can come back in and start to edit those points. So let's go ahead and pull that in just a little bit there. And I'm going to actually grab these and kind of elongate these a little bit more. Okay, just trying to make sure that we stay consistent with that sizing. Let's go back to edge mode. I'm going to hold down shift and drag again. And then we'll go to vertex mode, hitting 1 on the keyboard to do that. And then we'll readjust our topology. Now I'm not going to worry about the eyelash itself. That's going to be a separate object that we can build. So let's continue as if that's not even there. We're going to bring it right to this point, and I'm going to pull that down, kind of pointing off in that direction. Let's hold down shift, and we'll drag out another polygon, and we just want this one to create that turn that we need there on the corner. Hold down shift, we'll drag this one out to about here, and then we're just going to take these two edges and we'll bridge. Now come in and make any adjustments that you need to your vertices. Just trying to get the consistent polygon size as much as possible. You may have a few that are smaller or larger than others, and that's okay. So now that we have this loop for the eye, we need to make sure that we're taking care of the shape itself. It's very easy to come in and just leave that the way it is. But we need to remember that we're working in the left view as well, so we need to make sure that we pull that back far enough for this to look correct. So the way I like to start this out is I like to go to polygon mode, and then in my front view I'll grab this outside corner, and then I'm just going to grab my left view, hitting L, and pull that back to the edge of the eye. And then I'm going to take the edge, the outside edge here, and in my left view I'll pull it back just a little bit further. So you should get kind of this shape here. Then we'll come in here, and we're going to go to polygon mode. I'm going to grab this one in the center, and then this one, go to our left view, and we'll pull those out to the outside edge there. Once we have that, we'll go to edge mode, and we'll select these edges and push those forward a little bit. Just trying to make sure that that stays pretty round. So that looks pretty good. I don't like this long segment that we have here, so I'm going to pull that back just a little bit further, kind of alleviate some of that stress there. Alright, so we're looking good. I'm going to take this one polygon on the corner and just pull it back a little bit, not much. Okay, now before we go any further, let's check the overall shape of this by going to our Create panel and Sphere, and drag in a sphere about the size of the eye of our character. And that should, if you drag it out from the pupil, it should touch right here on that curve of the bridge of the nose. That's going to be setting in the eye socket. Now obviously this is a cartoon character, so the eyes are going to be a little bit larger. Now this is just simply a guideline. It's not something that we have to follow absolutely, but it is a pretty good way to make sure that your eye shape is as close as possible to the actual shape it should be. So let's select our eye geometry, or the eyelid geometry. Go to Edge Mode, hitting 2 on the keyboard, and let's just make some quick changes to this overall look here. So I'm going to pull this out, and I want these edges to touch the edge of the eye, and we'll go ahead and we'll take some of these other points, and if they're sitting on the outside of the eye, that's fine. We'll add more geometry, and that will kind of go around the eye a little bit better. Let's take this edge right here, or actually that entire polygon. Well, let's grab that bottom edge and let's pull that forward, or back to the eye. And then I'm going to go to vertex mode, and I'm going to do this individually. So we'll just pull this back, and we'll go to edge mode, pull both of those vertices back, and go back to vertex mode and pull by single vertices. Okay, so that creates a round shape, and we know that this geometry is going to fit pretty well into the eye socket. Now, always in the corner of the eye, you're going to have a little bit of a gap. That's not going to push all the way up against the eye, because we know that there's actually a little bit of tissue that fits between the eyeball and the skin on the eyelid. So that's naturally going to be open there. Now, what we'll do in this case is we'll actually grab this border that's on the inside, and we'll hold down Shift, and we'll actually drag that back a little bit, and that will create some geometry in there. And then I can actually grab my scale tool and scale that in both directions, and that'll kind of interpenetrate with the eye. Now, at this point, we could come in and add just a few more segments to round that out, so that way we're not cutting through the eye. However, by doing that, that's going to be more segments that we have to deal with, and we know that once we start getting this built out, we'll probably have some more segments that go in there, so it's not really that big of an issue. So taking a look at this so far, we're looking pretty good. Might be a few changes that I want to make to the overall shape of the eye, but I think we're pretty good at this point. Now, what we're building here exactly is the eyelid. So it's that tissue that's above the eye. So we should have a little bit of a crease right in here that is going to fold back underneath the eyebrow. Okay, so we need to make sure that we are creating that. Now at this point, let's take our eye geometry, and I'm going to take that sphere down pretty low. Let's go to something like maybe 12 sides, and we'll leave it just the way it is. And I'm going to hit Alt X so I can see through that. And let's take this geometry, change its color, and apply our material. And then I'm going to take this geometry on the top of the eye. So these 4 edges, I'm going to hold down Shift and drag those edges up. So with those dragged up there, let's go to our left view, and I'm going to push that in. I'm just blocking out the geometry that this is the eyelid, and it's not necessarily the brow. Okay, so we don't want to forget about this geometry. Looking at this from here, we can come in and go to vertex mode and start to pull these out a little bit more, so kind of following along with that shape of the eye. This might come down a little bit lower, as well as this one. Okay, so just make some minor adjustments, and that should kind of follow along with that that line that comes across the nose. And this is the bone of the brow underneath there. Okay, so now that we have that, let's also start to look at some other loops that we need to create. So this is around the eye. We've just blocked out the eyelid so that way we don't forget about it and that shape that needs to be created there. And now what we want to do is we want to create the loop around the lips, as that's going to make it much easier to connect in between. And that will also give us the loop that we need to start around the nose, which will connect back into that lip geometry. So we're going to go ahead and get started with that next.